Hello. I wanted to recap Module 2, where we looked at government intervention in the healthcare vertical, the healthcare space. A couple of things. Most of you did extremely well on the second quiz, and on the discussion I was very pleased about some of the responses. Also the paper, the position paper on government intervention, most of you received an A, and as long as you did the requirements of the document, regardless of your position, you did receive as much credit as possible. Government typically does intervene, not necessarily in individual companies, but certainly in industries, and usually for the common good. So if something has been evident, whether it be in aviation or in insurance or in this situation healthcare, where it's in the public good for the government to step in and intervene, and certainly it has done that, and really medical records, electronic health information records, healthcare IT has really benefited as a result of that government intervention. And when we look at the 4 points that can be made, we could argue about quality, we could argue about value, certainly accessibility. And if you chose a different aspect of it, whether it be insurance or some other aspect, as long as you went through and you made several points about that and argued why government was involved, that's where you got your credit. As far as government stepping away and what would happen, that's a hypothetical situation. So, anything that you put down that seemed plausible with a lack of government oversight certainly would have been counted. And then, of course, I asked you to take a position at the end and kind of wrap things up. So as long as you had those points in there, it flowed well. The one thing that I do want to mention about papers is that a lot of the papers that I received, and I mean overwhelmingly, it seemed like they were written, but no one actually read the paper or reread it before they submitted the paper. And I'm not going to say no one, but very few of you. And as a result, there were some awkward sentences, certainly some punctuation that was out of place, or sometimes just a phrase. So in that situation, if you read that out aloud to yourself or to somebody else, or perhaps video yourself reading the paper, then perhaps you'll catch many of those mistakes so that you can submit those and receive full points for grammar and for punctuation. For the quiz, the big hang-up or the big sticking point seemed to be the impact of value, quality, and value, quality, and access on the healthcare triangle. And really, the healthcare triangle wasn't mentioned per se, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were of the impact. When we're doing these papers, doing these assignments, reading through the notes, reading through the textbook, certainly some of the external resources, I want you to think with a critical mind. Don't just accept that whatever you see is, by blind faith, is the truth. So I think there was a quote within your textbook that said something about controlling costs would impact quality negatively, or something to that effect. And that's simply not true. Everybody should be concerned about controlling costs. Controlling costs doesn't necessarily mean reducing costs. What it means is making sure that we're mindful of how we're spending things, and we're spending things with the most fiduciary responsibility possible to achieve the best results. The impact of quality on cost cannot be overstated. The higher the quality of care, the less readmission, the fewer numbers of tests because the tests are accurate, or duplications of tests, certainly medication errors, all these things that the improvement in quality end up reducing cost over time. So if you look at it from the aspect of quality, if we're providing quality care to our patients, then the result of that is going to end up in helping with our costs. Now, we still have to control them. And I did have a student say, well, if our textbook's wrong, why are we even reading it? Well, if a diaper gets too full and kind of explodes, no one says, well, let's just not use diapers anymore. They're not good for, they weren't able to hold it this one time, so we'll just throw them all away. Well, no. There's a lot of good information in your textbook. There's a lot of good information that's out there. But I want you to think critically. If somebody says that if we decrease cost, quality is going to decrease, in a way that could be true. I mean, if we cut our nursing budget by 50%, it's going to negatively impact quality. But that's not how you should look at it. That's the way somebody looks at it who does not have patient care experience, who does not understand the whole impact of the healthcare triangle. As far as access, yes, more facilities are going to lead to increased access, but also more costs are going to lead to decreased access. So those kind of things, and access, if we provide access in rural communities, it may be more expensive to provide that. So there would be an impact on cost. But if we're doing technology such as having a doctor that has a remote situation, a remote ICU, where they might be over 4 or 5 different ICUs, where a nurse can go in there and there's cameras and there's equipment that feed into a central database or central control station, I should say, for the physician, then what happens is that you have one doctor who can see 4 or 5 different ICUs at any particular time and cover those at a much reduced cost than having one doctor in each and every facility. So those are a couple things that I want you to be mindful of, is that, you know, the testing, I really want you to be critically thinking about these. As far as the length of the papers, I want you to be able to answer the issue, answer the question, hit the points, and if it turns out to be a page, that's fine. If it turns out to be 4 pages, that's fine, but whatever you feel is necessary. I really want you to talk and speak and be able to write succinctly. Get your point across. Oftentimes, you're going to be working with leaders or executives or even your boss who will be in a situation where they don't have a lot of time. So you need to get your point across and articulate it very well. As far as for discussions and quoting sources, you don't really need to quote sources in your discussions. What I'm really looking for is this is a replacement for actually being on campus and in the classroom. You're not going to raise your hand and state something and then quote something that out of the textbook or quote something out of a resource article that you have. So you're just going to have free flow of thought, and that's what I would like to see in your discussions. The only time you really need to quote anything is if you are directly quoting from a source or you're quoting statistics that need to be backed up. Some of the statistics, like the error of human, 98,000 people go down, every day in medication errors, same as a jumbo, or 98,000 people a year. That came out in 1998. That's pretty well known, and it's 20 years old. So please use more recent and relevant resources when you do quote. Also, never, ever, ever, ever quote your textbook. And it doesn't matter if it's this class or if it's a subsequent class in your academic journey. You don't quote the textbook. And part of the rationale behind that is that instructors want to see that you are looking beyond just the textbook that you have. Are you going to the library, which few of us ever do, or are you using a search engine to find sources? Are you looking up on Wikipedia? I mean, if you use Wikipedia and look at the bottom, there are citations all over the place. And you can sort through and see which ones are relevant. You can also look through Google, but make sure that these citations are current. Another person had put something about some of the HCA requirements with the personal mandate. Well, of course, that's been rescinded for 2019. But if you're using a source from 2015 or 2014, then your source isn't going to be current. So the most recent information is that as of 2019, there will be no individual mandate, or at least no ramifications from a tax standpoint for not having insurance. So a lot of things to consider. You guys are doing extremely well. I'm very pleased. A lot of A's in this class, many, many B's. There's a couple C's, but we have plenty of points left in the class, and I know you can maintain your grade as well as improve your grade. Thank you so much.